I would have died before that guy came in. There's no way I was going to let anyone get hurt.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hear Cincinnati. This is a podcast where Cincinnati's best journalists talk about the biggest news of the week. Coming up on the podcast, WCPO anchor Tanya O'Rourke was reporting from Dayton Sunday, just hours after a gunman killed 9 people and injured 27 more in Dayton's historic Oregon district. She's going to join me to discuss the shooting and how Dayton's recovering. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about the biggest news of the week. So joining me now on our fantastic panel is community reporter Lucy May.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian.
Thanks for being here, Lucy. And also...
Happy birthday, Dan Monk.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday, Dan.
You just also heard boss lady Meghan Wesley here.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
And Dan Monk is our great fellow business I-team reporter.
And one of my BFFs.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys just sit next to each other
We're Thunder Buddies.
Forever.
We've been working together here and at our previous jobs for 19 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Yep.
All right, Lucy. Get us started. Hi.
Sorry, we're not just going to talk about Dan and his birthday all day. I mean, I could go on and on.
21 years old today.
Yeah, nope. That's not correct. So, I don't have a lot of solid zoo information. I feel like I'm really falling down on the job now that Mr. Kaiser's not with us every week and demanding these weight updates. But there is a super cute picture on the Instagram with BB licking the glass of Hippo Cove and Fiona sitting next to her. And the zoo talked about how Fiona gets her personality from her mom, clearly. And they've got also lots of cute pictures of the baby cheetah. And there was a super cute picture that I actually made my husband look at last night of Fennessy, the baby giraffe, kind of giving his mommy a kiss. It was really cute. So lots of cute animals. The weather's beautiful. I hope to get to go to the zoo again soon because I can't get enough of those baby animals. Yes. I also did some actual journalism this week, although I was out of the office for a few days because I moved, which was very crazy and hectic and chaotic, and it
always is.
Yes, still a little bit chaotic, but we're getting there.
How are the cats?
They're adjusting slowly. The one to have the hardest adjustment was Funky Winkerbean, who's my boy, and he's the biggest cat, but he's also very fragile emotionally, apparently.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, but he finally, last night, my husband and I took just a little bit of time to actually sit on the couch and catch up on Handmaid's Tale, which, we appreciate.
God.
Yeah.
I need to do that too, by the way. I'm a few episodes behind.
Yes, so good. And Funky kind of sat next to me and got in a more normal pattern. And it was good. He was finally kind of settling in a little bit. Yeah. Because when he's unhappy, he just walks through the place and just yowls his head off, which is not, it's not conducive to rest.
That's what I do too.
Yeah. It's like something like that. Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
I just sigh.
Yeah.
That's why I just walk through the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my cat reflex.
Yeah, that's good. We all have one. So I did some journalism. One of the stories is kind of sad, so I don't know if I'm going to sing about it this week. But one of the stories was good, more uplifting, and that is that Greenlight Fund Cincinnati and Hamilton County Job and Family Services teamed up to bring a new program to town. The program is called First Place for Youth. It started in California, and the idea of this program is to help young people who are aging out of the foster care system kind of get their feet under them. And I think we may have talked about this before. In Hamilton County, young adults emancipate from the system or age out at either 18 or 21, depending on their circumstances and a variety of complicated factors. But when they do that, they're kind of on their own at a pretty young age. I mean, think about when you were 18. I have an 18-year-old now.
I was a senior in high school when I was 18.
Yeah. And sometimes, usually they get to kind of finish high school, but really, you just graduate from high school and you're probably very few people are emotionally ready and mature enough to handle an apartment, paying bills, and doing all those things that you have to do to getting a job or being in school and handling all that stuff all on your own. There are some programs already that exist that help students or young people who are aging out of the system have some supports for sometimes 6 months or a year, but they're limited and funding for those is limited. This new program really aims to make sure that the young people first have stable housing. That's the foundation for everything.
That's huge.
Yeah. And then they have job coaches and education coaches who really stay with the kids for at least, I should say kids because I'm old, but the young adults
right.
For at least, for 3 years. So if you're aging out at 18, it's 18 through at least 21, and it's these same people. You have this steady support, and they really kind of walk you through kind of these decisions and help you bounce. The young people can bounce questions off of them. And I interviewed one young man who aged out of the system a number of years ago and talked about this man I interviewed, Canon Hopi. He had been in the system for 9.5 years. And he thought, he was 18 years old. He was ready to be on his own. He was excited. He thought he was ready.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody that age thinks they
Right, exactly. But he said, I look back now and I can say for sure I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
It was really, really hard. And he just talks about how much this program would have helped him had it been around when he was in that situation. So it's a really interesting program. It's going to be up and running a little bit later this year. The way it works is Hamilton County JFS has to find a local nonprofit to kind of operate the program. Mm-hmm. And so different nonprofits have put in requests for proposals to do that or have answered the request for proposals with their proposals on how they would do it. And JFS will select that nonprofit later this year. They hope to help at least 30 young people by the end of this year, and about 100 young people age out of the Hamilton County foster care system each year. And they're hoping to help like the vast majority of those. They said like 90% of those young people every year. There might be some that it doesn't work for whatever reason, but they really think this could be a huge benefit because foster youth, as they are called, are far more likely to experience homelessness. They're far more likely to be victims of crime. They're far more likely to end up having, bad run-ins with the criminal justice system, far more likely to become parents at a young age. Just all these things that make it really difficult for them to kind of succeed long term. The kind of odds are really against them. So they're really hoping that this is a program that they can wrap around these young people and kind of beat those odds.
Let me ask this. You mentioned they help with housing.
Yep.
What exactly is that process like? Do they provide housing, or do they just assist in like finding it?
They don't provide it, but they do. Yeah, they would assist in finding it and making sure that the young person's keeping on top of bills and meeting the rules in the lease and all those kinds of things that can fall
Figure
through the cracks.
Figure out what they can afford.
Right, exactly.
The same type of advice you might expect to get from your parents
right.
if you were looking for a place for the first time yourself.
Yeah, from your parents or your extended family
right.
if you had those kind
right.
of supports that were built in.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. This is making up for that, essentially.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that was one of my stories.
I'm getting into the other one is not an uplifting story.
No, it is not. And it was. This is something that I heard about when I came back to the office. A number of public health agencies on Thursday afternoon had a news conference to kind of sound the alarm about a really important problem that our community is facing, and that is the number of infants who are dying from sleep-related causes is on the rise this year. So far in 2019, the first 7 months or so of 2019, in Hamilton County and Northern Kentucky, there have been 20 babies who have died from sleep-related causes.
Now, when you say sleep-related causes, you're talking about sleeping in the same bed as your baby and somebody
sometimes
rolls? Okay.
Sometimes it's sleeping in the same bed as your baby and someone rolls over on the baby, or the baby suffocates because they get too close to a person. One of the really this is a heartbreaking story, but one of the things that really got to me personally as a mom is that there was a dad there at this news conference who talked about, and this dad is a man who's a pediatric cardiologist. So very highly educated, knows a lot about medicine and how to take care of people and babies and kids. His first son, Charlie, was 3 weeks old, and the dad sat down on the couch, was holding Charlie against his chest, and was watching TV, trying to kind of get Charlie to go back to sleep. Charlie fell asleep. The dad fell asleep. When the dad woke up, Charlie had died. And it's that. I mean, I've fallen asleep with my kids like that. I don't know how many times I did when they were babies.
Yep.
I have pictures of my husband sleeping with her. You see all kinds of cute pictures on Facebook and Instagram of moms and dads with their dozing off with their sleeping babies on. It looks like the sweetest thing in the world. And the thing that's really scary is that most of the time the kids do wake up. Most of the time it's fine. But this doctor that I interviewed compared it to using a car seat. You know, he said if you don't buckle your kid in the car seat the right way, most of the time they're not going to be hurt. But that one chance that you're in a car accident, it kills them. So that's why you have to do it every time. And he said that's the thing with safe sleep, that if you put a baby in a crib that has blankets or bumper pads or stuffed animals, those are all risks. And again, I did that. Like when my kids were babies, they talked about the importance of making sure babies slept on their backs. That's the advice that this father had got. His baby died in 2010. And back then the pediatric advice was you have to put babies on their backs. They sleep deeper when they're on their stomachs. And so your grandma and your mom will tell you, put them on their stomach, they'll sleep better. That's true. But it also, there's a greater risk that they won't wake up.
Right.
So babies have to sleep on their backs. That's what they were telling people. Well, now you can't have stuff in the crib. It has to be a hard surface. There are all these risks that they've determined are related to these sleep-related deaths. And in Hamilton County in northern Kentucky, we've had 20 babies, infants, these are babies below the age of 1 year old, die through July of this year. And that's twice as many as in a typical year.
In a typical full year.
In a typical full year, right.
So we're looking at we're on par to do 4 times as many.
If we don't stop it. And they had this kind of hastily called news conference where they were trying to get the word out that they call it the ABCs of safe sleep, and that stands for alone, on their backs, and in a crib. So I mean, my daughters fell asleep all the time in the bouncy seats or in the swings or in the car seat, and you know, when you're an exhausted, sleep deprived parent, your last instinct is to move a sleeping baby. You know, you're like, you're good, I'm gonna leave. But what the doctors say and what all the experts say is no, as soon as you can, you need to get that baby in a crib on his or her back. Like that's where they're going to be the safest. So they're really trying to communicate that message. They've got some other plans they're going to be unveiling and rolling out later this year. For example, starting in October, they're going to be training community members to become what they're calling safe sleep ambassadors and go throughout their community and really teach parents one-on-one the importance of safe sleep and what it means. They're going to work to make sure that prenatal care providers, birthing hospital staff, and pediatric providers explain the importance of safe sleep and what it means. They're launching an expansive social media campaign in the next few weeks to explain safe sleep and why it's important. They're going to be issuing a report on it later this fall. And some moms from the community have developed a video that discusses safe sleep. They're developing that, and they're going to show that, debut it at Final Friday OTR in August. So they're really trying to figure out, how do we get the word out? Although this doctor that I talked about doesn't fit into this information that I'm about to explain, another sad part of this is roughly 70% of all the sleep-related deaths in 2018 and so far this year have occurred in Black families in Hamilton County. So there's this racial disparity. The communities of North and South Fairmont, Roll Hill, and Millvale have been hit the hardest. In talking with Cradle Cincinnati about this in the past, although most of the time infant mortality has nothing to do with income, this is one example where income can be a factor, because if you don't have a crib for your baby to sleep in, you're more likely to just let the baby sleep with you or on the couch or in the bed or wherever you sleep.
I was trying to figure out why that would be the.
Well, do you remember? I think it was Switzerland a few years ago. They started giving boxes out to every mother who gave birth in the hospital, and the box, it was a relatively large box, and it had a bunch of supplies in it. But then it was also intended to be a place for babies to sleep. So, it's a big enough box for a baby to be in.
Yeah.
But so that was sort of intriguing to me because it was a realization and recognizing that, sometimes that's not the easiest thing to come by.
Right. And the good thing is that, and some families might not be aware that families who are in need if they're income qualified, can get a free pack and play or a portable crib, which is a safe place for a baby to sleep.
And it can fit in your bedroom,
Yes, and it can fold up. And I tell you, as a parent, I used to look at those and think they looked like the most uncomfortable things in the world because there's just like this little thin piece of wood on the bottom and a super thin mattress. But that firm surface is really important for safe sleep. You don't want to put your baby on a cushy pillow because that can lead to suffocation and all these other issues. So anyway, there's information in my online story about the number to call in Hamilton County if you or someone needs a free pack and play. That number is 211. In Northern Kentucky, that assistance also is available, and the number there is more complicated. It's 859-341-2464. And it's a huge public health issue right now. And WCPO had a pretty big in-depth project on infant mortality earlier this year, and when I saw that this was becoming a problem, that this issue was growing, even though infant deaths are still down overall, these sleep-related deaths are alarming right now, and as the public health folks said yesterday, they're preventable. So we all in the community just need to educate ourselves, educate our caregivers, educate our parents and the grandparents who are watching these babies, and try to keep them all safe.
Let me ask this, Ed. You may not know it, but I bet you do. At what age does it become not a risk to let children sleep like that?
I don't know what the medical. I mean, when they can roll over, right?
Yeah, you can't. Once a baby can roll over, you cannot stop them.
Right. Okay.
But like what they look at with infant mortality is through the age of 1. So all those risks for that sort of start to dissipate at the age of 1. And that's Cradle Cincinnati's whole push, is to make sure every baby born in Hamilton County lives to celebrate his or her first birthday.
Sure.
So that's kind of the magic number, but yeah, I'm with Meghan. Like, once your baby can roll over, good luck trying to keep them on their back because they do.
Well, then at least they can also usually pick up their head or move it enough to breathe.
Yeah, they're stronger. They're more physically developed. I mean, this doctor who lost his baby boy, that little baby was only 3 weeks old, and
that's terrible.
We've got a picture of him with the story. He was just beautiful and adorable, and I don't know. This doctor was so kind to talk with me after this news conference in a little bit more detail. And I said to him, I said, I've done that a million times with my kids, and I guess I just got lucky. And he said, I hear that so much. He said, I know that what I did isn't extraordinary. I know that I did something that just about every parent does, but that's why he feels like it's so important to tell his story. Right. Especially as, a pediatric cardiologist. I mean,
that's the thing. If this could happen to him,
right. Right.
It sounds like it's a 99.99% of the time it's no big deal, but that one fraction of a percentage time that it is a problem, it's a very big problem.
Yeah, there's no fixing it. Yeah. And if it's your baby or a baby you love, I mean, it's just
devastating.
And how do you I don't know, how do you ever kind of forgive yourself for that?
The risk is low, but the consequence is very big.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
well, and as a parent, you have, everyone and their mother is giving you advice. And everywhere you go, you get articles like, do this, don't do that. If you do this, they're going to die. If you don't do that, they're going to die. And so I think it can be very difficult to weed through the things that are actually important.
Yeah.
And that,
I'm willing to bet that you could find stories that say, if you do this, they're going to die. And another story that says, if you don't do that same thing, they're going to die.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it changes all the time. I mean, like,
it does.
I don't know
Exactly.
how many times I've read stuff. Well, it's like this, I think, oh my gosh, how did my children survive my parenting?
I know.
But I mean, it's like, and it changes even when you're pregnant. Like, I remember being pregnant, especially with my first child, when I was more anxious about the whole thing, going to my doctor and saying, I just read a story that eating too much broccoli is bad for pregnant women, and I really like broccoli. And he said, Lucy, do you have any idea how much broccoli you would have to eat to endanger your baby?
Exactly, that's the thing. So it's like, you can't have like lunch meat. I'm like, okay, you have a sandwich every once in a while.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
You're going to be fine.
Yeah. But it's like you want to do all the right things, but you're right. There are so many. And he said this yesterday when I was talking to this doctor. He said, we worry about swimming in the ocean to avoid a shark attack. He said, we worry about these goofy things that don't. And he said, but this is the thing that kills more babies than any other single cause. Wow. So let's really focus on this, safe sleep, and educate people and make people aware. So. So
it's
anyway.
interesting, too, because my kids are only 3 years apart. Mm-hmm. And when I was in the hospital with the older one, they said to swaddle them with their arms like on their chest. And then Yeah. And then with my second kid, that you're supposed to swaddle with their arms out. And this is like, it was very dire both times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
Right.
with my older kid, I definitely fell asleep with him in my hospital bed a few times. And nobody...
Right.
And then with my daughter, who's the younger one, oh my God, I did once and it was like,
Yeah.
which I get. I mean, I get it. It's
Right.
just, it's interesting how quickly that stuff changes.
Right. Definitely. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Well, thanks for reporting on that, Lucy.
Sure. Yep.
Megan, we're going to turn over to you.
All right.
What's going on with you this week?
So our chief investigative reporter, Craig Cheatham, has been investigating a landlord named John Klosterman in Sedamsville for the last couple years. So John Klosterman he owns a very large portion of this. Actually, it's the smallest neighborhood in our city. The population's a little over 600 people, and he owns a majority of the property within this area.
It's physically small as well, correct?
Correct. Yes. It's on the west side.
Okay.
So essentially, the city has Klosterman's gone through lots of legal troubles because he's had tenants accuse him of all sorts of things, from requiring sex acts in order to not get kicked out of apartments, to not upkeeping apartments, to all sorts of things. So
he's a real stand-up guy.
Correct, yeah. And he's got all this legal stuff going on, declared bankruptcy recently to try to kind of figure his way out of some of this stuff, but that didn't happen. So most recently, he filed with the court that he needs to sell about 70 lots and a whole bunch of other buildings in order to pay a $578,000 court judgment against him for unpaid taxes, code violation, and a couple other things. And so essentially, the former Sedamsville Community Development Corporation director, Seth Walsh, said that him leaving Sedamsville could probably be the greatest thing to happen to them since Pete Rose. Which the reason being because he has so much property throughout the area and it's not well kept. Even the city, there's lots and lots of, records with the city saying that his properties are falling into disrepair. Mm-hmm. So without him owning these properties, it's possible that this neighborhood could actually go through the revitalization that it is hoping for. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that have helped other neighborhoods to become, to kind of turn around is a square. And so, like a Hyde Park Square.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's not one here. And one of the reasons is, because there's nowhere to put it because he owns so much property. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes down and who buys it. Klosterman is listing all of the properties at $2.5 million or best offer. Although
he's going to sell them all collectively.
Yes, or he's trying to. Although in his last bankruptcy case, he said he had almost no interest from buyers when it was listed at $1.2 million. So We'll see. Anyway, it's it seems to be like this neighborhood is almost being held hostage because, there's nothing it can do. So we'll see. We'll keep following this case.
Yeah, that's crazy. And Craig's been reporting on that for a while now.
He has, yes. Actually, so several times he's tried to get interviews with Klosterman. The first time, Klosterman kind of jumped into his truck and drove away. This most recent time, he actually shoved Craig a couple times as Craig was trying to get comment from him. So, which is on camera. But so it's been quite the story, and we'll continue to report on it.
Yeah, I remember Craig telling me about, and I'm not going to try to repeat his criteria because I don't remember them, but I remember him telling me about when he decides to follow somebody to try to get an interview and when he wouldn't, when he would be more respectful. And this was one where he's like, he decided, I'm going to follow this guy, and he got in his truck and drove away, but he was following him, trying to get a comment to get him to comment. And he explained to me the rationale, but I was very fascinated by it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's some idea that us as journalists, when we're telling stories, if we don't include a voice, it's because we decided not to. And, in a lot of cases, it's because that person did not want to comment.
Yeah, and
so
most of our stories have that line in there. That,
but,
this spokesperson, this person declined to comment. We reached out. We didn't hear back or whatever.
Correct. But it's a lot more. It's that is kind of an easy line or, to overlook or to kind of overhear. And
That's
so
fair.
when you have stories like this where people have been victims of these kinds of things repeatedly, I think what it does is it shows, how hard that we really did try to get this guy to talk. And we really wanted to get this guy to answer to everyone who, feels like he hurt them. But, and so we want to, it shows our efforts to get him on camera as opposed to just sort
an
of being like,
accountability
he wouldn't
issue.
talk. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, pro tip, if you are approached by an I-Team reporter and you don't want to talk to them, shoving them probably isn't going to help your case.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Bad idea.
It doesn't make you look sympathetic on TV.
Correct.
That's a little pro tip for anybody out there who's on the receiving end of that.
My tip is just get naked. and that way the video is unusable.
Or curse, or put your middle fingers up.
Yep, I know. That was my thing. I've told people if you're ever in a perp walk, if you have your hands free or you're cuffed in front, middle finger right in the front of your face, then they can't. Yeah. Yep.
I was putting middle fingers in front of my face just then.
Megan is gesturing. It's hilarious. All right, I'm gonna keep my segment brief a little bit, but I want to first celebrate because the Roebling Bridge has
John A.
reopened.
Roebling suspension bridge. Woo! Yes.
With a big net on it.
That looks like a diaper.
It does.
Yeah.
But at least it's open.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
So hopefully that'll calm some of the traffic down on Brent's Bridge because it's been getting in my way and I don't go over it. I don't even go over it. It's just 75 gets backed up and.
Yeah. My husband was actually a little bit sad that the Roebling was reopening because we have walked across it a couple times and you could actually sneak and get on the bridge itself, which I don't know if it's like they didn't have signs saying don't do this under penalty of death, but it seemed like a bad idea. But my husband and daughter did it.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I did it for like
too, for
like 5 seconds and like got crazy vertigo looking through those holes. I was like, got back on the little sidewalk.
It's kind of like a metal grate almost, isn't it?
Yeah, I did not like that. But my husband's like, oh, that was kind of fun. I said, you had your fun.
Yeah.
You need that bridge back.
Yeah, I wanted to do that once.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
I did it last time it was closed.
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago or something for painting, whatever it was. Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be closed again. You'll have another chance.
Yeah.
That's fair. You're right about that. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention happened overnight last night. A car traveling the wrong way down Central Avenue struck a horse-drawn carriage and fled.
Yeah, that's like
terrible.
Right.
Poor horse. I saw the picture of it too after it got hit. I don't know if we put it in our story because it was pretty graphic, but
yeah, in the story it does mention that you could see blood on the horse off the lights, the police lights that were there.
Poor horse.
I think the horse's name was Doc.
Yeah, Doc is the name of the horse.
It's okay though, right?
It's non-life-threatening injuries, but the horse does need to see a veterinarian. The driver of the carriage hurt his hand and had to go to the hospital for that injury, but again, not life-threatening. I'm concerned, though, about the horse because there are non-life-threatening injuries that will get a horse killed.
Yeah, like broken legs
Right.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
But I don't know if that'll be the
It
case
appeared,
here.
so Andy, one of our photographers,
Mm-hmm.
tweeted a photo last night, and it appeared that the horse was standing. So,
that's good.
I don't know what that means, but I assume that means it's at least able to,
Walk around
hold
and-
itself up.
yeah.
So,
And I saw this attached on a Facebook post, and the comment suggested that we shouldn't even have these horse-drawn carriages downtown, or that we should ban them, or if we need to have them, they should move to Eden Park or something like that. And I think there was a similar thing going around in 2014.
yes, there's
Yeah.
always been controversy about those, especially from animal rights activists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
who
think there
claim
was
that they're not
actually a
treated well.
petition in 2014 for city council to ban them or something, but yeah. I don't know enough about horses to know if they look happy or sad when they're pulling those carriages, I always look at them and try to gauge, but if they were cat-drawn carriages, I feel like I'd be able to gauge the animal's happiness a little bit better. Also, they need a lot of cats.
Also, I would definitely ride that carriage. Definitely. It wouldn't go anywhere.
No, it wouldn't. The cats would just be going all different
Oh, yeah.
directions.
No, they wouldn't be going. They would all just lay down and
That's
take a nap.
true, yeah.
You'd be in a carriage with a bunch of sleeping cats tied to
Yeah.
the front of it.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I would do that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the whole wrong way driving thing. I feel like
Yeah.
it's just,
And the fleeing.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and how fast or messed up do you have to be where you don't see a horse-drawn carriage and you don't stop? You
Right.
know, like what is?
Was there no headlights and lots
Yeah,
of
were
alcohol?
you like
Yeah.
hi or texting or something? Like all of a sudden you're like, oh, horse. I mean, like if I saw a horse, I would like slam on brakes or switch lanes or
A
something.
horse
Like,
facing you.
yeah,
Right?
right.
Like, this is not supposed to
What
be
kind
happening.
of mindset do you have to be in? Like, boy, that horse is facing me. That horse facing me is really getting close.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The horse is big, bigger.
I mean, fleeing the scene suggests something.
There was something else going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have to imagine. I'm going to put a little poll up on our Twitter at Hear Cincinnati. Do you think we should ban horse-drawn carriages from the downtown area? Check out that poll and vote, and we'll tell you next week what won, or you can look at it on Twitter like most people would. I think that wraps up our panel for this week. Coming up next, WCPO anchor Tanya O'Rourke is going to join me to talk about the tragic shooting in Dayton over the weekend. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. A gunman killed 9 people and injured 27 more early Sunday morning in Dayton's historic Oregon District, which is an arts and entertainment neighborhood. Joining me now to discuss the tragic event is WCPO anchor Tanya O'Rourke. Tanya, thanks for joining me.
Of course, anytime.
So let's quickly recap what happened Saturday night and early Sunday in Dayton. What can you tell me about the events that took place?
So as we've been reporting over and over and over, about 1 o'clock in the morning, well, let me back up. The gunman and his sister, Meghan, and her friend went to the Oregon District to go out. At some point, they become separated. This is what we know at this moment anyway. At some point, they become separated, and it seems logical, and I am adding this in as my own guess. He goes back to the car, puts on body armor, grabs a long rifle, semi-automatic.
You know what? I actually read about that. It's actually considered a pistol.
Is it considered a pistol?
Yeah, because it was put together with a kit. And the only piece of the gun that's actually a firearm is the receiver.
Is the pistol.
Is the pistol
Is the
part of
actual
it.
firing mechanism.
Correct.
And so the rest of it screws on?
The rest of it just attaches to it. And the only
Oh,
thing that's regulated
fancy.
is the actual thing with the trigger that pulls the bullet in. Everything else you can buy directly on the internet.
Well, that would help explain a lot of things, right?
Yep.
So regardless, this thing had the ability to fire rapidly many bullets. He had a magazine of 100 bullets ready to go.
Yep. I think if everything was full, he had the capacity to carry 250 rounds with him.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to really be a good shot. You know what I'm saying? When you have that, my imagination is that if I had that many bullets and I could just swing a gun around and around, I'm going to hit something.
Yeah.
So he exits an alleyway, and as he does, he starts shooting people, and turns to his right, which is 5th Street. He comes out looking at 5th Street, turns to his right. There's a taco stand there, and starts shooting at those folks and walking across the street, going to his left and forward, and shooting. And again, this is happening in literal seconds. I've taken longer explaining this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And shoots folks outside Ned Pepper's who were waiting in line to get in to what is a very popular bar up there. One of the first people he shot, not the first, but one of the first people, as we're told by police, was his own sister, shot her dead.
Yeah.
And, we have all sat around the newsroom wondering, like, why? And of course, it's not for us to report why, but we personally sit and wonder why. Was it just by accident? Was he so rage filled? At some point, you don't see straight anymore. Like you become almost disoriented when you're just your adrenaline's pumping so hard you don't even know what you're doing. But we've all wondered, why? And we haven't heard any good explanation as of the taping of this now.
Yeah, then
as to why.
We're talking on Friday, the 9th, August 9th. And no motive reported as of yet, but I'm sure the police are looking very closely.
They are. And I know we reported the other day when I was there for when President Trump visited that the Betts family, who lost 2 children in this mess, one, the shooter, the other shot. And then, the shooter, obviously, he was shot dead as well. But so they lost 2 children in this deal, and they're apparently cooperating with police, which is fantastic news because, maybe they have some clues. Maybe there's a computer hard drive that they can help understand.
There was also a friend that was with the trio who went out who survived the shooting. He was shot, but he has survived the incident. And I know police are interested in talking to that person to maybe shed some light on what happened, what was said that evening. And
at least as far as I know, we have not heard what that person has had to say yet via police.
Now, this is someone who has had incidents in the past where he's had a kill list in school and a rape list.
That's what we've heard from multiple sources, is that in high school he had a kill list. He had some axe to grind for some reason, it seems, against women. And women tend to be his target, so to speak, on paper anyhow. Obviously, in this situation, he killed more than women. He killed 9 people in total. He was killed. That made it 10. And then 27 other people were injured. A little more than a dozen or so by actual gunfire. The rest from just fleeing and getting injured.
I have the number here. 14 were actually hit by bullets. And of those people injured, 11 were hospitalized.
Right. And we saw a couple days ago when I was up there, we did see some folks who came back to visit the growing memorial outside Ned Pepper's. And they had, bandages on their legs. It was clear that they had been injured in some manner. We attempted to speak to that person, and she was very clear she didn't want to be spoken to, and so we were not going to push that. They're victims. We're not interested in hurting anyone. But it seems nonsensical. We know that he was part of a band, which is, and forgive me for not remembering the genre of music, but you, as the audiophile you are, will know.
Porno grind,
which in and of itself sounds offbeat.
It is. I saw some of the song names, and I'm familiar with shock rock genres that are intended to shock and be so kind of vulgar that they cause a response. And there's supposed to be some irony to it. I did read an article with his former bandmate who was saying, we all thought this was a joke, and
he took it seriously. And
my God, did he take all this stuff seriously? Yeah. Now, say what you will about joking about, hurting women and all those sorts of things. How much of it really is a joke? It's
really not funny.
Right. And this particular subgenre of that is all about that specifically.
Yeah, I had never heard of porno grind.
I had not either until this.
And the name of the band that he was associated with is even, it's meant to shock. But it's very vulgar, and it seems like a misogynistic type of name. Yeah. And so something, again, that seems to indicate he had some sort of issue with women. Now, again, we're just making suppositions at this point. We're surmising this based on the intelligence that we have. And I will be fascinated to know at a later date if they can come up with any rationale for this. I mean, we still don't know why the guy in Las Vegas shot up all those people at the music festival. So we may never, ever know.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was just devastating. And I don't know where you were when you first heard, but I woke up to, we have an alert system at our television station that I had no idea we actually had until that day, that apparently sends text messages to every single person who works at our station saying there is an emergency, please report to work. I guess that came out around 2 a.m. I
think it was more like 4.
Was it? Okay.
It was.
Regardless, it was like 7:30 in the morning when I saw it.
Right. Yeah. No, it was more like 9:30 when I saw it.
My phone lives on silent because I'm in a studio constantly.
Absolutely.
So
mine too.
people will say, "Oh, I called you 5 minutes ago." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see it." But so I didn't hear this, and I woke up, I saw it, I panicked, turned on the TV, and for whatever reason, my TV would not give me a signal. I could hear what was going on, so I could hear our reporting,
had a little
but I
glitch in
couldn't
the
see
picture.
the picture. And I'm calling in. I'm on my way. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And because that's what we do. Like we are not first responders for sure. I'm not saying that, but we do run to work when there's a bad situation, whether that's 2 inches of snow or something like this, significantly worse. We run to work because that's what we do for a living. We go and help out and report what's happening. So I was up there Sunday, and.
Yeah, what was it? You actually went up to Dayton on Sunday. What was the atmosphere like that?
As I was just about to tell you, I as a journalist have been on many, many scenes, and I think this one really hit me because you had national media, local media, you had throngs of media there, and we were all being held back when I first arrived. We were all being held back because it was still considered a crime scene. They were still finishing up some work to it. And what I mean by finishing up work is they were spraying down the blood off the streets and off the sidewalks.
And debris.
And the debris.
Shell casings. 41 shell casings picked up by at least.
And some of those had to be by police officers because let's give credit where credit's due.
Sure.
Within 20 to 30 seconds of him opening fire, that man was dead. And that's because the officers were on the scene. They were there patrolling the area anyway because it is an entertainment district, and they played heads up. They heard this. They did not hesitate. And that is straight up training, in my opinion. That is just people knowing what they're supposed to do when they hear something like that. If I heard something like that, I would be like, what is that? Oh my gosh, what is that? I would be on the ground and 5 seconds later wondering, where's this coming from? I would have no...
Right.
But they're so well trained, these officers, and obviously these particular officers were well trained, 6 of them. So we were there on the scene, and they were holding us back because they literally had fire trucks there washing down.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it was
your stand up with a fire truck in the background.
Yeah. And some of it was like I was right where he started shooting. I was literally in the alley where he began shooting and then turned out to the right to hit the taco truck. And what they were trying to spray down was the taco truck area had just tipped over, the taco truck, I guess, or the cart, and grease had spilled everywhere. So they needed to get that sprayed down. But still, the whole area was just wet. It looked like a movie scene where they wet down the roads because they had to clean off all the blood and the glass and everything else. But once they opened back up the road and they were preparing for a vigil. So it's open. You can't drive, but you are allowed to walk around.
Walk through and
It was the quietest place for hours until someone picked up the mic for that vigil, which happened at 8:00 that night. It was silent out there. I mean, there might have been some quiet talking, but that's it. And it felt like hallowed ground.
Wow.
It really did. And it was, you just felt the weight of what had happened.
We did some reporting on Jeremy Ganger, who's a bouncer at Ned Pepper's. Did you see any of that?
I did see some of it, yes. And actually, I talked to the reporter from ABC who interviewed him. We were there the day that she interviewed him, and we were asking her, what was he like? This is the bouncer you're talking about, right?
Right, the bouncer who for Ned Pepper's, who
this is one
held the door for
extraordinary
people
man
to get in, and then held the door shut to keep the gunman out.
What he did that night was nothing short of extraordinary. I mean, this is not a first responder. This is just a dude. This is a bouncer at a bar who happens to be a professional wrestler. And I think by his own admission, he would say, "Look, I don't do real well as a professional wrestler, but but his training as far as learning, standing there to take a fight, kicked in. He stood there ready to take whatever blow would come at him, and he protected the people in that bar." And thank goodness the shooter was dropped, feet from him. But
Right.
that man was ready to take any blow. And I mean that. It was very clear from the videos that we saw, from what he said. And what I loved about what he said, I think it was Amy Pilgrim from ABC News who interviewed him, said, she asked him, are you going to come back and work here? And he said, of course. If I don't do that, he wins. I have to come back and work here.
Interesting. I didn't see that part. That's nice.
And I think it was just something that she asked him when they were done, and she shared that with us when we were talking to her about like, hey, what was he like? And she and her entire crew. And now when we go up, we're usually a 2-man crew. When ABC News, CBS News goes up, it's a 5 or 6 man crew. Right. There's one guy just in charge of audio, one guy just in charge of lights, one guy just in charge of whatever. There's a producer for the report, whatever.
A lot more resources.
It's a gaggle of humans. And all of them stood around talking to us about what a fantastic man this was. Yeah. They took him to lunch. They're like, we just loved being with him. And she said something interesting to me, the reporter. She said, it was clear that this is a guy who life had not beaten up yet, who was not going to let life beat him up. He was just a guy who was going to just be a great guy forever.
Wow. The thing that stuck out in the interview that I saw with him is he mentions that he looked the gunman right in the eyes, even though he had a mask on. It could tell that he was calm, knew what he was doing, and he was there to hurt people.
He wore body armor. Yeah. Let's think about that for a moment. I mean, he wore body armor. He had a gun that he knew could fire off dozens of rounds in seconds, and he had the rounds to make that happen. Maybe he didn't have an absolute plan that I'm not convinced that he meant to kill his sister. I mean, the jury's still out on that. We don't know. Right. But it's obvious he wanted to cause as much chaos as he could, and he wanted to get in that bar. In the news conference that I saw, there was a Dayton officer. I didn't catch the name. I don't recall the name. I would not recall it either. It's okay.
And he said it's unimaginable that he would have targeted his sister, but it's also unimaginable that he would not have recognized her. So there's a lot of questions that they need to answer because both instances there are, if he meant to kill her, that's pretty.
That's hard to even imagine.
That's hard to imagine. And if he didn't recognize her while he's got this gun, that's hard to imagine too.
I don't know though. Like, if you've been in a situation where you're driving, like you got in a car accident and you just can't, like everything around you is like going and blurring in slow motion. That's the only thing I try to think like, was he so hopped up on adrenaline? Although you hear the bouncer talk about how calm he was.
He knew that this was it. This was the end for him.
Well, yeah, I mean, this
or
was...
that's what the bouncer
right, he was prepared to die. I mean, even though he wore body armor, we've seen this time and time again, even down here, like the attempts of suicide by cop are becoming, seeming to me, more and more prevalent, at least that we've seemed to have to report it more often. I remember hearing that police officer say that, and I thought, when you are so outside of yourself that you are willing or so, I don't know, I don't want to say that this person's crazy. That's not for me to determine. Sure. But, and I'm not sure crazy is a term that we should even use, but you're not right thinking when you're going to go blow away a bunch of people. That's just
sure. Regardless of motive, that's not something that we consider normal.
That is not normal thinking.
Hopefully.
I would hope not.
Yeah.
If it does become that way, we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
But, so you do think, well, maybe a person is so, what am I trying to say? That they're going to do this no matter what. Mm-hmm. They are determined to do this. And if it means that his sister's part of that, well, that's just too bad. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I hate to admit to you that I'm a little fascinated by this. I want to know more.
Maybe because it's so uncomprehendable.
Look, I remember there was a young man who killed his brother in Hyde Park. I don't know if you recall. This is several years ago, and he walked to Hyde Park Square, washed his body of the blood of his brother off him in the Hyde Park Square fountain. And I happen to sort of know that family, and the idea of hurting your own sibling. It just, I mean, I can't understand killing 10 people or 9 people either, but the idea of hurting your own sibling, I just find that unfathomable.
Let's talk a little bit about some things that happened later that week, because you were back in Dayton on Wednesday, and that is when President Trump visited both El Paso, which also saw a mass shooting over the weekend, and Dayton. What can you tell me about the president's visit to Dayton?
Well, if I can back up to when I was there Sunday, the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, was very kind and took a moment to just talk just to me. We had requested it, and they found a quiet space near the shooting scene where we could do this. He did not want it to turn into a giant news conference, and he was kind enough to let me ask him some questions. We talked about, what are you going to do as a governor? And then he got up on that stage for the vigil, and we heard what was a quiet crowd suddenly start chanting, "Do something, do something, do something," and you could not look away from it. He obviously could not look away from it. He, as someone who has to get up and speak and people talk over me all the time, you go, "Oh, come on, let him finish." But you understood they were mad. And whether that anger should be directed at him or every politician or whoever, they were mad and they were scared and they were frustrated and they want something done. So fast forward a couple days later, or 3 days later, the president and his wife come to town. And the thinking was they were going to roll through 5th Street in the shooting scene. National media was prepared for it. We were prepared for it. Everyone was prepared for this.
But they would roll through the Oregon district.
They would roll through the Oregon district and see the location of the shooting, where it had occurred, maybe, and probably just literally drive through it.
Sure.
But it was expected. And I believe that was planned. But there were so many people there. Now, there are plenty of people in support of President Trump there, but there were also plenty of people who were there who were not in support of President Trump and or against any type of guns or wanting gun control and wanting that same chant, do something. They wanted something done.
They wanted that chant to be heard.
They wanted to be heard. They wanted the president to know they are done with this. They want gun control of some sort. They want mental health addressed, whatever it was. And then there were people, they wanted something. And so you had a clash of different ideologies, of different people coming together. And there was never that I saw any physicality to it. Okay. But it was a little unnerving to hear
some tension.
Oh my gosh. We would even be in the middle of a live shot and I was thinking, I could hear them behind me. Like, this is getting out of control. Like, you could hear the screaming and the yelling at each other and the venom being thrown back and forth.
By supporters who were there to see President Trump and by
people who were not protesters
who wanted to demand action.
Right. And so, or people who just did not care for the president.
Sure.
And so it's hard to know for sure if they were and or,
Right.
And so, and then you'd see like a news camera, float over there or two, and that just made it worse, So we tried to keep back because, we don't need to incite this in any way, shape, or form. But they were just aggressive with each other, and I was a little surprised, and perhaps I just didn't see it, but there wasn't a lot of security presence there at that time that I could see, like a lot of police, and maybe because they were busy with the presidential visit and they were going to be moving to there. But it became very, very clear to me that was too hot, and I say that in air quotes, hot of a situation to bring a president through. Had that motorcade rolled through that there, goodness knows, someone would have tried to bust through the line.
So you think maybe the plan was for that to happen?
I think it was a thought, like, hey, let's roll through there. And then it was like, no way.
There's
no way.
Too much going on there.
There was way too many emotions. It was very, very, very tense. And it was kind of interesting, is the word I'll use, that it was happening literally on what I call hallowed ground a few minutes ago. This was happening on this memorial, where they were supposed to be there to pay tribute to those who had been lost or injured, and maybe that was the way they expected to pay tribute. Maybe by standing up and saying no more, that was the way that they don't want these people to have died in vain. Maybe that is true, but I remember thinking, this is hallowed ground. This is like, these people died here a few days ago.
Yeah, you think about the way you're telling me it felt on Sunday, very quiet.
Yes.
And calm, probably, with, still emotional, but quiet. And then several days later on Wednesday, it's still emotional, but Now it's very loud and there's a lot of tension.
The moment, so
big
even
change.
Sunday, the moment you threw politics into it or a politician into it, it became
Volatile.
And I think that that's something that the politicians cannot look away from. I think that you've seen, Governor DeWine, prior to hearing the do something chants, had said to me, I'm instructing my team to get to work on this right away. And he got up there to say the same thing and, kind of was shouted down. I don't know if he actually intended to say it or not. I assume he would. But then the next day or 2 days later came out with a 17-point plan to address exactly what he had told me he was going to do. Now, I think that, number one, you can't look away from the fact that there have been so many mass shootings in this country, but can also not look away from people shouting at you, while you're on stage trying to say, we love you and we're here for you, and them saying, nope, we're done.
Yeah.
Do something.
Wow.
And so when the president came to town, it was like, oh gosh, this is not, it felt powder keg-ish to me. It didn't turn out to be that. I'm glad.
Thankfully, yeah.
And later that day, when everyone had dispersed, throngs of police were there. I mean, there were groups of 5 police officers every 10 yards and up and down both sides of that street, walking, just hanging around, just making sure that everyone was keeping it, on the down low.
Wow.
So,
Tanya, where do you think Dayton goes from here?
I don't know. The one thing that's been nice to see is that Dayton has rallied seemingly together. Sure, there are factions. There are people who disagree on ideologies about this. But truthfully, the folks of Dayton are nice people. They're strong people. They've lived through the tornadoes of May 31st, something like that. I was up there for that.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, my 2 visits to Dayton this year have not been quite what they should be.
No.
They've gone through a lot. They've had a lot going on. They have a city council in flux. I think there's a lot of tension up there right now. So hopefully, I really do hope and pray that it's a cool rest of the summer, that they can find some path forward together, and really let everything calm down.
We talked a little bit about the motive or lack thereof earlier. Do you anticipate that we'll find anything out?
I don't know. I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I do think that people want to know why. Why is always the question, but why? Why?
Yeah.
And I know I want to know. I just don't count on the fact that we're going to know. I think that the days of manifestos seem to be dwindling.
Sure. El Paso is an example of one with a manifesto, but that's not the typical.
Like I mentioned, Las
shooting.
Vegas, we don't have any idea what happened, why that man decided to gun down so many people. I think in this case, we might get a better sense, maybe not a direct, like this is absolutely what he said he wanted to do, because there doesn't seem to be a manifesto.
Sure.
But based on the fact that his family is cooperating, they also lost 2 children in this situation.
What a tragic story for them.
It's just absolutely horrible. That I think that maybe that, if they're cooperating the way police say they're cooperating, it's possible that they'll be able to piece together at least a semblance of why this happened.
It is notable that I know we reached out to that family and they, released a statement or made a statement about, wanting privacy and things of that
really,
nature.
being so sorry for what had happened to.
My goodness, I can understand that.
I mean, I'm a parent, and
Yeah.
I don't think my children would ever shoot up any place or person, but I cannot imagine what it must feel like as a parent to not only have lost your daughter, but know it happened at the hand of your son, who also went on to kill so many other people and injured others. I just, the weight of that I couldn't imagine it.
Who was also gone at this point as well.
Yeah, he's gone.
They lost both children. Wow, just a tragic story for that family.
Absolutely. And I have no idea if they're the greatest people on earth or if they helped create a monster. I have no idea. But my goodness, I just can't imagine. By all accounts, Meghan, the daughter, was this lovely human being. Mm-hmm. So how do you have a lovely human being and someone so troubled that they're willing to, go on a mass shoot? I don't know.
We may never know.
Nope. But if we do know, we'll let you know.
It's hard to make sense of things that make no sense. Yeah. Tanya, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me about this terrible event that happened over the weekend, and hopefully we don't have to report on this type of thing too frequently.
Please, no more. It'll be so great. Brian, thank you. It's always great to talk to you.
Thanks.
That wraps up Hear Cincinnati. I want to thank Tanya O'Rourke and, of course, our fantastic panel, Lucy May.
Hey, thanks for having me in. Happy birthday, Dan Monk.
And boss lady Meghan Wesley.
Thanks for having me.
If you want to read more about any of the stories we talked about on this episode, you can find links in the description of this podcast. And if you'd like to subscribe and stay up to date with everything Cincinnati, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, etc. That wraps up this episode. Thanks for listening.